Welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Christy Clemens Hoffman. Each week we will discuss tools, tips, and ways to radiate your best life ever, interviewing practitioners, authors, and luminaries to help you on your path. Wellness, joy, peace, abundance. What do you want to radiate? Hey, welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. Today we are in Geneva, Switzerland. Well, actually, Lancy, Switzerland. Lancy. To radiate design with our own astrologer in residence with Radiate Wellness, Mary Jane Staudenmann. Full disclosure, Mary Jane also happens to be my aunt. But
Yeah.
wonderful astrologer, a wonderful astrologer. And you've been doing this for a long time.
Wow, I started studying in 1978, and I've been consulting since 1983, I'll say. 84, so, do the math. I don't know, you're better than I. 35 years?
That's quite a long time.
It
So
is.
you know a thing or two about the planets
I like to think so.
and what they do in our lives. In fact, I like your approach because you really tie astrology into every aspect. It's not just relationships. It's not just career. I mean, it's just like even health.
For sure.
Right.
For sure, what is designated straight out as medical astrology is very, very useful in seeing every person's first of all, the terrains in his body that are going to be sensitive, that he has to pay attention to, what type of vital energy, because there are at least 12 types of vital energy that he can plug into, and see where they can go wrong, see where you're likely to have issues. It's very healthy in planning one's direction of one's energy.
Right, it is. And as we were talking before we set up, we were trying to decide what you radiate. But we came up with design. Interesting. Can you tell a bit why we chose that?
I've always been, in all these years, looking at astrology patterns in people's lives in the sky. I've been struck by the real elegance, the real beauty of the movements of the planets with themselves, among themselves, in and out of our lives, how they're touching us. And the ultimate belief that I feel very strongly that there is a design that we don't all immediately see. We're not immediately sure of what's going on in this vast world that looks like so muddled, but in fact there is a design, there is a pattern, several patterns in fact that are going on, but they're interacting, and the studies of astrology is extremely useful in putting order in these what seems like very disparate movements.
Sure.
But out of the chaos comes a design. And I've always found astrology very, very useful in finding that design in our lives, first of all.
Right.
And ultimately trying to understand some other things that are going on around us.
Right, yeah, so that there's a plan in our lives. You know what? I had a very interesting question someone asked me today about that. Like how much are we tied to that design and how much can we change within that?
It's the ultimate question that always comes up with astrology, among other things. I believe that our natal chart, what is essentially a blueprint for our lives, is going to show us, first of all, the basic plan. Secondly, of course, the instruments that we have available, the different energies that we have at our disposal, and then will show us where things can go wrong. This is the interesting part. Where things can go wrong, and I fully believe that this is some sort of karmic baggage that we have always to deal with in this life and in each life. What we've learned, we bring in, but what we haven't gotten right yet, we've got to try this again. And so we can see if in our blueprint, maybe you need another door, maybe you need another garage, maybe you need a better roof. And these are the aspects, what we call the more conflictual or challenging aspects in the chart, for instance, that are going to help us build muscles. They're there to show us what we have to get right this time. And where we're going to build character, build a better person.
Right, some of our challenges, and I think it's very interesting that we can even see maybe what our karmic balance is, what our karmic load is coming in our chart.
Absolutely, absolutely. There are now. I'm not a specialist in karmic astrology by any means. There are other people who have gone off and love to look at back lives and so on and so forth. I'm pretty interested in what's going on right now.
Right.
However, I can see an old chart, for instance.
Sure.
An old soul that's coming in with some very important issues, but that are holding on from the past. At the same time, there are very young charts, young people who are either free of a load. Mind you, the easy charts aren't always the easiest to live through.
Really?
But, yeah, and that's an interesting thing. I come back to this need to build muscles, and we build muscles through conflict, through challenge.
Exactly.
When I see these glorious charts, they're absolutely very
sunshine and rainbows and
perfect.
Right.
These are people who can become depressed. These are people who lack fiber, lack grit. When they're placed in a difficult situation, there's nobody there. Right. They don't know how to count on the muscles they've got. So I'm not afraid at all to show somebody the difficult points in a chart, in their natal chart. This is where they're going to be able to grow and grow through some experiences, past experiences, or that are going to come up again now, that are going to show up.
Right. Of course, this, I love how everything overlaps, and this makes me think of the chakra system, of course, where we may have vulnerabilities. Do we have in my case, a lifelong challenge with the throat chakra? Where do we have these issues, right?
The planets in the astrological reading, and especially in medical astrology, but it applies to all kinds of sources of energy, are applied to the chakras as well. For instance, you're talking about the issues with the throat chakra. This is Venus. This is communicating. This is bonding. This is where what and how we love Venus.
Right.
And how we express that, our desires.
Right.
Desires, another huge word.
Well, yeah.
So it's all here, and with the Venus that's challenged in a chart, we have to decide what we want, what we need, what is going to be best for us, what we value. And how to communicate that, how to show. Sometimes this throat is also indicating things that we haven't been able to see, to say.
Right, exactly.
Sometimes you need to tap on the table and say, hey, it's my turn.
I need to speak up.
I need to do this thing.
Well, speaking of desire, speaking of this design, speaking of this voice and Venus, etc., you've written the book on it.
I have, that I'm very proud of. Desire and Design is the name of the book. And talks all about Venus, also Mars, and how through the signs, through all the astrological zodiac, each planet in its place in the zodiac, and how it's affecting our choices, our actions. Exactly. There are 100 different little thumbnail biographies of famous people who are living through these choices, these planets, how they've acted on his or her choices, how they've finally shown up in these people's lives. Also very subjective illustrations that I've taken from artworks, all kinds of artworks that to my mind show graphically some facet of this planet's personality.
Well, I love it because it's very visual. And, as a visual person, I like to look at a picture and go, oh, that's what that energy looks like.
Yeah, precisely. Right? And this is how I came to write the book. The Desire and Design was initially a weekend workshop. that my students in astrology kept asking for. And they were saying, well, yes, but what does this look like? What's going on?
Right.
What does this planet look like? And it's exactly that. So this is how I started throwing artworks up on the wall and saying, well, it looks like this. It's this color. It's this kind of a brush stroke.
Right.
And then that took me off into studying different biographies, again, delineating how these things have been used. And the whole thing just got kind of out of hand, so I decided to write it all up in a book that I thought maybe could help other teachers, other students, anybody who's interested. I've always said it's an art book for astrology freaks, and it's an astrology book for art lovers. So finally we could see not only what's in the illustration, but also what's in the life of the artist.
Yeah, because you have people like Clara Barton and let's see, who else you have? You have Ferdinand Hodler in there. You've got musicians, Mozart, all of these famous people.
Kings and queens, presidents,
Right.
bandits,
Villains,
and bad people and good people, and
Right.
just what's making them basically do what they do.
Yeah.
And that's what astrology is. That's what an astrology study
Well,
is.
and that's why we go to astrology to find out more about ourselves.
Precisely.
Right? What do I want out of
precisely.
life? How do I go about getting it?
And yes, and why do I keep making some same mistakes? Why am I hung up on choosing this type of a partner or this type of a job, or I can't get away from my parents, or a lot of things that come
Right.
up like that are blocking us. And this is a wonderful way to get around. If you come to the wall, you can either go over it, or you can carve through it, or try to go around it. Anyway, this is what we're looking for, basically,
Right, so
in an
desire-
astrological study.
Right. So desire being, what we want, and then design being how we design to get it.
Exactly.
Exactly. How do we
And this is how Venus and Mars work together in
Right.
the chart. And I say the Venus and Mars are the right hand and the left hand of the sun.
Interesting.
The sun, that's a vital energy. That's the heart.
Right.
Also hooked up with the heart chakra, of course. And then the Venus is going to define what that heart basically wants. And she's going to send out Mars to go get it, to go figure it out. Mars is a wonderful problem solver as well, and it has a lot of our notions of competition and aggression as well, but also problem solving abilities. How do we, go get this thing?
Exactly. And that can give us a lot of information about, why we keep hitting these brick walls when maybe we're going
Sure.
about it, in a wrong way.
Exactly. I find often this is tied up with past mistakes, but also, we see so many just family patterns that repeat and repeat and repeat through the generations. It's fascinating, in fact, to see the family signatures. When you have if you have the luck to have a series of charts from different generations in a family, there's inevitably an aspect or a planetary placement that serves as a signature to everybody. Everyone in this family. There's a rallying point, and typically it's a point of again, repetition of an attitude or a behavior pattern, something that can hold us back quite seriously. And very often this is something we have to get over as well. It's important to at least see where it's coming from. And if necessary, just say,
The buck stops here.
Yeah, exactly. This is the end of the train, and I'm getting off, basically.
Right.
I can do better than this.
Right. And so, in families we see, patterns of belief, patterns of behavior, patterns of emotion, patterns of reaction.
Quite.
But you're saying that it's even more than that it's maybe even in our stars and our planets.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow, interesting.
Oh, yeah. We can read these things, and it seems to be part of, there's so many vocabularies. Astrology is one way to look at the organization of the soul and the body that is repeated through generations. It's one vocabulary that's available to us.
Of course, we've got the Akashic records as well. We've got the chakra system, the energy system,
Sure.
all of
Sure. And these planets aren't just rocks in the sky. They also have their own energetic aura that seems to touch us. I think this is the part that we're picking up at birth. Even before birth, we can talk. There are a lot of astrologers that work on the chart of conception.
Interesting.
That talks about the whole pregnancy period.
Interesting.
That can be very interesting too, to see, if only to see what's going on around this child as he's developing.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that gets into more maybe parental relationships, things that are going on directly around this pregnant woman. But still, I think there are plug-ins. It's quite possible. This is not something I've leaned on particularly, because it's hard to do, first of all, to know when a child is conceived.
Right.
But I find the attitude and the approach is most intriguing, because I think a lot of, especially the old messages, are conceived at the same time as this child.
Interesting.
He's coming in with a pretty good idea of what he has to accomplish.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
And so, in that aspect, I mean, in a way, we are designed from conception, to follow certain plans in life. But, of course, we can, we have the freedom to change and decide along the way.
Better do. Yeah. I
Right.
say often, if a 30-year-old person resembles too closely to his birth chart, there's a problem. He hasn't been paying attention, and he hasn't been doing his homework.
Interesting. Okay.
Because this is a blueprint. It's a starting point for us to develop.
Right. Oh, I love it. I mean, and that's what we're here to do anyway.
For sure.
We're here to learn.
No, and it's absolutely not a static thing. The birth chart, there are techniques that astrologers use to show the evolution of a birth chart and show directions that we can take.
Right.
In planetary transits, how things are opening up, how chances we have to change the dialogues that are going on in the initial birth chart. And so it's an evolutionary process. It's not something that you're born with and you have to deal with.
Right. It's not like
the door's always open. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not like this is my destiny and I have to do this. I have to follow it, and
Exactly.
I can't play any other hands. Right.
That's it. You've got these energies, and you can shape them the way you want. I was at an astrology congress once where a very clever fellow said, "You don't like being a Scorpio? Well, don't be something else,
Right, yeah.
You can change your attitudes. You're free to see what the other guy is thinking about, and maybe he's got some better ideas than you, and maybe you can slow down your energy or pick up an energy. We're here to change in any case."
Right.
And so if you have a choice, go with it.
But first, we have to know what we're starting with.
Exactly, and this is the point. It was Plato that said, "Know thyself," and I think this is the first step, and that's invariably how an astrology student gets started, is looking at his own chart, learning his drawbacks. So where are his strong points? Where are his weak points? What he's going to do differently. It's precious. It's precious information.
Yes, I think it's very useful just to have that roadmap, right, and know what you're dealing with. Now, something else I wanted to talk about, besides your book, of course, which is wonderful, and just the themes and the purpose of astrology in the first place. But we were talking a couple of days ago about how there's some big shifts coming up for people.
Oh.
Now we are recording this, actually, video and audio. We're recording this in late May, and it will probably be published around mid-July of 2019. So these are energies that are coming up later in 2019.
Exactly. The literature for astrologers is chock full. Has been chock full of talking about these movements that are coming on, that have taken place, and that are coming on even more strongly throughout the year and throughout 2020. I'll just set the scene a little bit, because this incredible conjunction that we're going to be seeing in 2019 started in 2008 with Pluto coming into Capricorn. Now, this date may ring some bells. 2008 was when the bottom fell out of the world's economy, the world's notion of how to treat money, how to save money, how to spend money. And Pluto coming into Capricorn, Pluto is the planet of destruction, of transformation, of regeneration. Pluto takes no prisoners.
Right.
And in his movement into a sign is going to create cataclysms in the sense of that sign. Now, Capricorn has everything to do with money, industry, power, governments, right? Great organizations, especially governments. So Pluto coming in just set the stage for enormous upheaval in our economic system.
So this is the Tower card in the tarot.
Exactly. This is that you go back to ground zero, and because your base is not healthy, and that's always the message of the tower in any case. So we're back to ground zero. Now it's up to us to build new paradigms, new ways to treat money, new ways to treat power.
Right.
This was the beginning of a lot of continuation of a lot of trouble in the Middle East, and trying again in other parts of the world as well. But a new power base that we're setting up. All of this to give a little history to this movement that's coming in now. Now, what's been interesting for us has been the movement of Saturn that's coming to the end of a cycle, of conjunction with Pluto. This is always a time of especially industrial and economic revolution.
Interesting.
Very. And I've got some dates here. I just have to look. So the Saturn came into to join Pluto in the sign of Capricorn already in December of 2017, and this is preparing then the onset of this conjunction that won't be absolute. It begins in February of this year, February 19, and will be exact in early 2020. So we're spending all this year, in fact, watching the movements back and forth of Saturn and getting ready for this ultimate conjunction, and in early 2020.
And a conjunction being just
this is the beginning of the cycle. This is like the new moon.
Okay.
It's a conjunction where the two planets are occupying us the same degree. Now, these are very slow planets. Saturn's faster, and it's coming on to Pluto. Pluto's been sitting here for years now, and since 2008, and is just doing his number to all of us, actually. Saturn coming across is always the sign of a new cycle that's beginning. We can look at all of the conjunctions of all of the planets, and each one is setting up a new cycle. So it gets rather complex. But this one's particularly visible and compelling because it's always a time when new rules are being set. Saturn brings on the notion of absolutism. There will be new rules, that there's a beginning and an end. We've got to consolidate. We've got to get very serious about changes that have only been in upheaval for these last few years. Saturn comes in and says, no, it's going to be this way. Things get organized. Now, initially, with any revolution, new rules are set. We saw this in the first industrial revolution in the 1800s.
Yeah.
The technological revolution happened during the last cycle, the last conjunction of Saturn and Pluto. So it always just destroys our initial paradigms, and then we have to move on and set up a new shop.
Hi, this is Christy. I just want to say that we here at Radiate Wellness hope you're enjoying this podcast. It's free to you, and we hope that you find it informative and inspirational. Heck, even fun. We have just 3 small asks of you to help us radiate growth. First, please hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening on. That way, you'll receive a notification every time that we have a new podcast episode out. Next, please give us a thumbs up, a like, or a 5-star review. If you're feeling inspired, a positive review wouldn't hurt. These 2 small things will help others find us when they're searching for great podcasts. Finally, please tell your friends about the Radiate Wellness Podcast. Better yet, show them how to find us and how to subscribe. If everyone did that, we would double our audience. Thanks a lot. We really appreciate it.
Now, what's interesting this year, okay, so this is going on. It's taking its time, but it's definitely in place. Now this year, and this happens in December of this year, 2019, Jupiter is moving into this same conjunction, and we'll finally be joining the other 2 a little later in 2020. Mm-hmm. Jupiter is the lawmaker. Jupiter is supposed to be showing us how we can pass legislation, how we can set up the rules, how we can expand this idea of a new industry, new industrialization, and allow it to expand to its logical limits. There's a lot of lawmaking with Jupiter as well.
Interesting.
And a sense of expansion is really the main word in Jupiter. But also he's going to set up the sidebar, okay, we've got this immense industrial energy going on, setting up new rules. Well, here's what they're going to be. And we've got a sidebar over here saying, okay, Iran is going to understand some new laws. There's going to be new legislation sort of all over the place. Now, to my thinking, there are some other very nice planets taking place too that are going to be helping along the way. Mm-hmm. We've got a big hand, and a lot of imagination coming from Neptune that's in Pisces these days. One that's going to be important from a technological point of view and from a monetary point of view is Uranus coming into Taurus, which is the house of money, which is the sign that talks about organization of funds. Wow. And so we're seeing, Bitcoins, Uranus that's always involved with innovation, with change, with modern approach, with technology. And so we're seeing the Bitcoin world, we're seeing other odd ways to treat money. The banking system has gone completely bonkers because everybody's doing other ways of treating money, other ways of moving money around. It's going to be useful, and where I come back to the importance of this year into the end of 2020 is that this is all happening, and the best things are happening in the earth signs. So in this trine of the earth signs, there will be room for growth, for serious concentration on the here and now, on our earthly means, that is to say, on the minerals that are available, treatment of minerals, treatment of agriculture, treatment of fixing this earth. Yes. And I think if we use the extreme power of Saturn and Pluto to accomplish some growth, I think this is going to be a wonderful time, a wonderful window for us to change around a lot of very bad habits that we've seen in the way overstressed fire signs that were teaching us all kinds of abstract ways to use this energy, but that weren't based in anything solid. Mm-hmm. So as we're moving into these earth signs and we're finally getting some organized energy looking at this earth, I firmly believe, I may be alone in my optimism, but I firmly believe that we can get a lot done. New laws, new legislation, fantastic, new interest among people. Mm-hmm. It's got to come from the ground up. And just a new interest among people to pay attention to this poor earth finally.
Well, we've been seeing a lot of that lately with this movement by the young people to hold protests and manifestations for against climate change, etc. And Bill Nye, for crying out loud, coming out and saying, "Look, you boneheads, you need to do something.
Fix this."
Right. This is not a warning. This is this is it.
The generational shock is interesting because Saturn is a very old planet. Saturn, and especially in Capricorn, represents the old guard, the old rules, the old heavy system.
Right.
And we see these kids coming in and say, no, our generation is not going to act like that. We're just, we've had it, and it's now or never,
Right.
They're starting to shake the walls a little bit.
Right. Yeah,
And this is a very good tendency, I think. It's excellent. Yeah, we can't go on the way we've been going.
We cannot, and I just can't. Just hearing about all of these upcoming changes, all these upcoming energies, I can't help but think about our country. Well, your original country, the United States, and how we've been through so much turmoil, and how we had so many environmental laws overturned, that type of thing. So I'm just hoping that there can. I know. I'm hoping that we can come to some, just a renewal of those environmental laws.
What were in place already, exactly. Wouldn't be too bad.
Right.
Wouldn't be too bad. That's a whole this other sidebar of local madness is yet another cycle that bears looking at, but that'll probably be for another day.
Yes, that would be for another day. But I love how we've got our little microcosm of how our chart affect our life, but then there's also globally, astrology really speaks to us on the global stage, doesn't it?
Sure.
Right. How do you even?
Well, it's this is the hard part sometimes in astrology. We see these vast movements and the sort of earth setup that I was talking about earlier, but there are obviously some births that are going to take more advantage of these planetary positions than others. People born in the earth signs, that is to say, Taurus and in Virgo and in Capricorn.
Okay, thank you, yes.
Right, okay. Are going to feel this energy in a much more positive and applicable way than some hangers-on in Sagittarius or even Leos or Gemini folks who aren't built that way. They're not understanding the same messages.
Right.
They're not in the same way. And so there's a certain ease for us, and also in the mirror sense of the water signs, that is to say Cancer and Scorpio and Pisces, who are going to be much more at ease in these general movements, in these huge movements, than are some other signs or people born under other energies. Who are going to feel this blockage as something, personally insulting, and what do you want to close my fabrique, my usine, and make me go to work somewhere else? Well, yeah, it's time, and it's
time to do
so
something new.
Some other people are going to be much more challenged.
Right.
So, it's kind of everybody has his turn, and you just wait for your turn to turn on again.
Yeah, well, and again, I love how things overlap. All the things that we study and all the things that we know just overlap so much. And Dolores Cannon talking so much about the 3 Waves of Volunteers, which is a wonderful book. If anybody can read that book with the 3 Waves of Volunteers, that when the call went out that Earth was going to be going through these shifts, these major growth spurts, that we need help. We need who's going to volunteer to come and help the Earth. And so we have like this first generation, the old guard. Right? Who come to shake everything apart.
Yes, exactly.
And then we have these new waves of volunteers who come to build on that rubble. Right? So we've had this shaking apart in the 60s, and with the feminism and civil rights and anti-war, but then we've got these new energies coming in to rebuild.
So it's all a repetition again of these cycles that are unavoidable to a certain degree, and it's up to us coming back to how human beings are supposed to be building into these cycles. It's a question of accepting your place in these cycles, trying to understand again through the birth chart. There are no shortcuts, so you have to look at the entire chart and see where you can go, see where you can be, and how to act on these terrible, incredibly huge movements. Where to where to take your place, and what brick can you take to the wall.
Yes.
It's really a question of what can I do, what am I capable of.
What is my place here?
To get involved in the universe. This is really it. And I think that's the ultimate best reason for an astrological study is to see what your brick is and where you can place it.
Where we fit in. I love that, because we all do have our role that we play, in this greater society. So it's really good to have just an idea of where that goes and what we can do with it.
Totally.
And so astrology can help us understand that, but also on a personal scale, but on a bigger scale as well. But I love how all the different things that you talk about, like the conception astrology and medical astrology. I know there's Vedic astrology. A good friend of mine, I hope to have her on this podcast, does Vedic astrology. There's just all these different types. And humanist, and that's more what you adhere to, isn't it? The humanist astrology.
Rather, which has it's a modern astrology in the sense that it has embraced Jungian psychology, in fact, and found the parallels in the language. Jung was a great adherent of astrology.
Oh yeah, he was a big fan.
He really was very fond of things that he learned through astrology. And applying it to basically the psychoses and the complexes, the psychological complexes that he was seeing. But through that too, he was always fascinated by inspirational and invisible languages. And again, astrology is a series of symbolic language, and so with that he could say, yes, we can go out of the psyche as such, and to see how in fact our dream life, our unconscious life, is at least as visible, at least as important as this terrestrial life. And he was at the time the only psychiatrist who was willing to go that route. But it's true, and so the humanist astrologers are using essentially modern psychology and reading the chart as the planetary imprints on our psyche. So it comes down to that finally.
No, I think that's brilliant. And again, I just love how these things just overlap, and just understanding ourselves from a basic standpoint, and knowing what our wants are, how we go about getting those fulfilled, etc., etc. And I know you can also take someone's natal chart and pair it with somebody else's. For example, in a business relationship or a marriage or a relationship, romantic type of relationship. How does that work?
This is called, there are two approaches. One is it's called relational astrology. And one technique that I love, first of all, it's a simple comparison of the planetary positions in the two charts and how they're going to talk to each other. But then there's another approach called composite reading, which is essentially a really physical blending of the two charts that's going to show us the mechanism of a relationship.
So basically taking these two relationships, putting the charts together and creating a
third mechanism, a third entity, that represents, that's going to show us where our strong points are in this relationship, where our weak points are.
Right.
What buttons we're pressing. Each one is pressing some of the other guy's buttons, one way or the other.
Right.
Where we can use this information, where to hang back, where to forge ahead, what basically you can base a relationship on. There are people who should never travel together. There are people who should. I've seen some composite charts that said you shouldn't hang out in the same room more than 20 minutes together. This is not going to happen. You can see if you're speaking the same language.
Sure. If you want the same things.
If you want the same things, it's a fantastic technique to see what the mechanism is really, and how to work out some of the problems. Maybe there's another way to communicate that's going to work better for in a couple or in a business relationship.
Sure.
So many things. Or I like to say it's sort of what if you have an everyday tractor kind of a relationship, or if you have a thing that you just want to take out on Sundays, it's not going to hold up under pressure.
Right.
This is good to know when you're trying to get something off the ground. So.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah,
and then you can even do this kind of composite chart for like maybe an enterprise, like something you're wanting to start, like a business.
For sure. And just to know
definitely.
Definitely. Although it's usually, there's another technique called elective astrology.
Wow.
That shows us good times to be signing contracts, good times to launch that business. Good timing is everything in astrology, and in our lives actually, so according to certain. So that's another technique that I enjoy using for electing surgical dates, for instance, when we have a choice, electing contract signings and other interests like that, interviews.
Oh,
when to have your interview?
Great idea.
This is fantastic. Where you're going to be at your strongest, at your best. Anyway, when we're free to choose a day and time that works for us, do it.
Right. Find a good one.
It can only help. Yeah, it can only help.
It can only help. Wow. So, my gosh, we've covered so much ground here. What else do you think is important to cover? Maybe we haven't talked about, or what do you want to make sure everybody knows?
The main reason people come into consultation, I've found all these years, is when they come to a crossroads, or a dead end. This is true too. When the past attitudes and aptitudes, habits are no longer working, and we're only seeing problems and blockages that my clients are finally willing to give up and get over.
Right.
So they come in saying, why am I doing the same thing all the time? Why is this not working out? Why is my life not working out? My job choices, whatever choices. That's one. Or you get to a point where, which is more exciting even, where you have to choose, if you have some options. I like to use this this time to what I say, get out of the middle of the storm and have an objective look at the big picture.
Sure.
And astrology is particularly good for that, especially if you're in an elective period where you're having to make some important choices, or some important changes.
Right.
So I think that's what I would like people to understand about the possibilities of an astrological study, is to be able to get a little objective distance and see the big picture.
Because we get so lost in the weeds, don't we?
Absolutely.
Right? You've got to be able to see what the big picture is.
It's very difficult sometimes. And I see the other half of my clientele is coming in at times of stress with planetary transits.
Oh my gosh.
We're feeling on a very visceral level movements in the sky that are working on or off of our natal chart, and these are particularly sensitive periods of time, and it's very interesting to see why I'm so anxious, why all these changes are coming at me at once. Why is this happening right now? And when we can see the source of the change or of the stress, we're in a much better position to deal with it.
Well, we know that there's an end in sight.
Precisely. That's the beauty of cycles, is that they're cyclic. And there is a beginning and there's an end, and it's going somewhere, or whatever it feels like.
I remember last summer we had eclipses, we had
Did we ever?
retrogrades. It was just hideous. I think there were 6 eclipses going on at one time. It was just awful.
Yeah, it's heavy duty energy time. That's proved to be the case. Oh, we don't even see all of the, obviously, we don't see all of the cycles beginning and ending and waxing and waning, and that's probably a good thing. But occasionally it's useful to sit back and say, whoa, that was a big week. What happened?
Right.
What hit me? And it makes some order for the rest of the events that are shaping up around these different eclipses and these different transits. Mm-hmm. So that's really what I like to do, and I like to show people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that there is an end in sight, and the cycle is coming to an end. You might not want to think about moving right now.
Or divorcing necessarily, or there's a lot of things that, or buying a house, or, there are good times and bad times to be doing things. And that's finally where it's all useful, isn't it?
Where people come in for that. Mm-hmm. And so I should say that you are living in Geneva, Switzerland, have been for decades, and
long time.
See clients here in your home in Geneva, which is absolutely lovely. But you can also see people on Zoom.
Sure,
on video conferencing, which is great.
Through Radiate Wellness,
yes.
Yeah, we can set up appointments.
Yeah, and then on your page on Radiate Wellness, we've got all of the different services, the natal chart and then the composite chart, and all these things, and you can make an appointment directly. So that's very helpful. Awesome. Well, it's been really great. I love talking about this stuff. So much.
I love my subject and I live my subject, and if it shows up, if it can help anybody else, that's fantastic.
So much the better.
Yeah, so much the better, exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
Good. All mine. Thank you.
Radiate Wellness is a community of holistic and alternative healers and consultants based in the Kansas City area, dedicated to helping you create spiritual, energetic, and physical well-being. To learn more about our practitioners, services, classes, and events, or to schedule an appointment, visit us at radiatewellnesscommunity.com.